Okay, good morning. This is the VOLTHA TST meeting. And let's see, we can dive right um, into the agenda for today. See, 6:18, good. Okay. So just a couple of announcements. I did post in the TST channel about this earlier. I'm going to be on vacation the first week in July. If somebody would be able to cover the 2nd and the 9th, that would be good. I will be around on the 9th, but I'm having a dental procedure done, and I don't know what type of shape I'm going to be in on the 9th. So probably assume I'll be incoherent. Okay, so for updates, so the work on the LFVPN and the AMI recreations are still ongoing. No status updates on those at the moment. Okay, so one update for the AMI images. I was able to pull a lot of, let me back up a little bit. So we need to reproduce the the system image we were using in Jenkins that we've done the releases on, that we were doing builds on. Because there are not bleeding edge tools in being used in Jenkins. We're using stable versions. I have gone through the logs and found a lot of the versions that we need to use for like the Python interpreter, the Golang interpreter, package versions that we're using, things like that. I'm just trying to get an image together so that we can start running Jenkins, or getting an image together with the proper tools and versions on them so we can start doing builds again on them. The repository I'm going to be targeting first is going to be the VOLTHA Protos repository. Um, we actually have all three, we have both Python and Golang in there. We're doing builds, we're producing prototypes and headers, so there's going to be a good place to, very simple, isolated place to start evaluating the system images so we know that they're still in a good state. Okay, so what was it last week? Mahir had suggested that we try and push up the time frame for the V13 release for before December. And I've gone back through and tried to get lists of things together that we're going to need for it. One of them on the VOLTHA wiki, I started whoops, no, not that thing. Um, that's the main page. That's perfectly fine. So off of the VOLTHA wiki, I've created a release 2.13 page, and there's all kinds of stuff in here. So to start with, this is some of the high level tasks that we're going to need to do in order to get a release prepped and tested so we'll be able to push it out the door. First and foremost are getting the AWS AMI images back online so we can actually do work. Right now, VOLTHA is affected because the open core AMI is no longer available. And also the ONOS AMI was also affected in the same way. Right now, I'm not viewing this as a critical dependency for our release. It does need to be fixed. We do need to have AMI images to build, but with the VOLTHA 12 release, we did go through and update and publish all of the ONOS component artifacts that we're dependent on. So those newer versions are available, and we should be able to build without having to actually jump into the ONOS builds again. So we had a little bit of insulation there. We also have, these are more tasks that we have to work on, but for upgrades, we need to work on the Golang upgrade to version, I think it's 2.17.3. That's to get the VGC component of VOLTHA released. Also, I'm hoping we don't have to dig into this, but Python also needs, we may need, I can't talk today. So in a general context, we do need to upgrade Python, both for the robot testing harness to get that to a newer version, but more of a dependency. We need to upgrade Python because there's a dependency in the Jenkins software upgrade that we need to do for part of the Linux Foundation transition. I'm hoping at least for the release, we don't have to upgrade Python because that has potential to affect all of testing in VOLTHA, which could turn into a pretty big job. What I'd like to do is get everything together, get the release out the door, work on the Jenkins upgrade off to the side, which will um, include having to upgrade Python. So we will have to upgrade the testing harness and VOLTHA system tests. Um, what makes this kind of difficult is we do have central testing in VOLTHA system tests, and the VOLTHA Helm charts are isolated as well. But in order to do an upgrade, if we upgrade VOLTHA system test to use a newer version of Python, that immediately affects all of the code repositories because they're going to be testing and running with a new interpreter, and not all of the code in the repositories or the test suites have been updated to work with it. So that's just kind of a problem with it. So testing failures, some of the problem children, we have an issue with the intermittent test failures, the transient test failures in the end-to-end ping tests. We have some BB-SIM failures that were showing up. There are two timeouts in both. There are two timeout failures. One is 15 minutes and the other one is 10 minutes. One of the timeouts is in VOLTHA Protos. And there's a second one, it's in VOLTHA Go. I believe that one's around profiling, but all the tickets are down below. We have another problem, an intermittent problem with VOLTHA stack deploy failing at times. That's another cryptic failure. There's not it runs, we kind of don't get a lot of feedback with it. So some more debugging is probably going to be needed around that to figure out what was going on. So part and parcel with Mahir's request, I've gone in and triaged a bunch of the tickets that are in the different areas that we're going to need to work on for part of the release. So the VGC Golang upgrade, these are the tickets I was working on. We need to upgrade one of the Docker images. And there were a couple of problems around that I've got to dig into. But those are ongoing. Under the common failures, these were the end-to-end ping tests, yada, yada, yada failures that were showing up in different repositories. There wasn't a lot of correlation between them. Sometimes they pass, sometimes they fail. But between the timeouts and these end-to-end failures, these test failures are affecting a majority of the patches that are in Garrett. Because they fail for one way or another for some of these tests. So these are going to need to be looked into. And I have a little bit of a breakdown by repository, some BB-SIM failures. VOLTHA Protos, this was the timeout failure. VOLTHA Go controller, this is the second timeout failure with some more detail around it. I had a thought, just a random thought. So the patch that's triggering the timeout failures, there is quite a bit of changes going on, being introduced by this patch. It's adding a few things and reworking a few things. I'm wondering, this could be nothing, but I'm wondering if we should do a deep dive on the logic. Since it's profiling related failures, I'm kind of wondering if there may be either delays or alternate code paths that we're following now that have either increased the runtime or increased the complexity within the library. Maybe that's what's causing profiling to fail, but that's just a guess. Ping test. I'm going to start logging Helm chart failures in here. Some of them may be fixed. They were related to problems installing some Helm charts. I did go through a while back and clean up some of the dependency errors, but we may need to do that exercise again. Let me see. Oh, the Open OLT repository. We're going to have to look at this too. I did find a proprietary copyright notice in the Open OLT repository. This is absolutely going to have to be fixed. it's a Broadcom copyright. I suspect this is just an oversight because Broadcom generally uses the Apache 2.0 license for code they contributed to the community. So this just may require a contacting Broadcom and having the license updated. VOLTHA TST had some problems too. There was at least one silent failure. And this ticket would be good to work on as well. So a little while back, when BISDN was working in the Berlin lab, we had port forwarding set up in VOLTHA. So when pipelines ran, there was an external process that spun up a port forwarding process, did a few things, and then terminated the process at the end. We did find a while back that there were some reliability issues with this setup. Sometimes the port forwarding didn't spawn up fully. Sometimes it misbehaved. So at the time, BISDN went in and they changed some of the core places this logic was being used. And the external port forwarding was replaced with an ingress controller. And that seems to help quite a bit. There's just some residual cleanup work that's going to need to happen around here. There's still some scripts in the Jenkins pipelines that are setting up and tearing down port forwarding. We obviously need to remove that. But we need to figure out if that logic is actually being used. If it is, if there is not an ingress controller in place to replace that logic, we're going to have to set up another ingress controller, augment the controller setup to use it. And at the time, Jan also was not sure if there might be other possible connections that are behaving the same way, like in gRPC. So we may need to do, probably what the thing to do is shut down the forwarded ports and see if anything starts failing. If it does, then we can spin up a new controller if we need to. But the external port forwarding is kind of brittle, so we should get rid of that just to harden the system a little bit. That may help with some of the test failures. This triage is far from complete. I'm just starting to add content, and maybe we need to make separate topic pages for like VoltCTL and BVSIM for the individual failures and probably for the timeouts as well. But if anybody would like to add content to the pages, grab any of these failures and debug them, by all means, jump in and feel free to start working on them. And there's more release tasks that need to be put in here too. I know that's a lot. Does anybody have any questions about that? I will forward this to Mihir too, so he has a chance to look at it. Okay. Well, like I said, we'll be continuing to add content into this, in this. Oh, and also, I know I'm jumping around here. I'm also going to be spending, not a lot, but a few cycles here and there, working on VOLTHA documentation to make sure the release steps that we're going through, to make sure all of that content is documented. And there's some pages in like some of the preparation notes and the release notes that need to be refreshed. It probably goes back into the v2.10 days. So 2.8 and 2.10. So it may need some updates as well, but we'll try and get the documentation current as well. With that, I guess the floor is open for discussion. If anybody would like to bring anything up. Okay, I guess it'll be, there's only a few of us, so it's probably a short meeting today. Yeah, just a reminder, if we can get somebody, I'll post in the TST Slack channel as well. If we can just, if somebody would volunteer to cover for the 2nd and the 9th, But other than that, I guess second call for if anybody has anything they'd like to bring up.
So, Jay, I can cover on the 2nd, but on the 9th, I will be on vacation. So I
Okay.
can't cover on the 9th.
Okay, perfect. And maybe Mahir can cover on the 9th. We'll see. Okay, I guess with that, we can give you quite a bit of time back. Let me see. Okay, well, thanks for joining.
Thanks, everyone. Bye bye.
Yep, bye.